So this, the dual ornament of liberation, the so we yesterday we talked about the desire or the purpose or the main kind of wish of all the beings is to free from suffering and find a lasting happiness, lasting peace. And it is not that we do not work hard for that. We try our very best, but we don't get it because we don't know how to. That's the main understanding. So therefore now the main teaching from the Buddha was this, and this is his main finding, is that there is a not only possibility, but there is a way for not only lessen the troubles and problems and pain, but completely eradicate all the sufferings and experience the highest, the ultimate, the lasting peace and happiness. That's the kind of the experience, and that is what the main objective of the practice. Now, how to do that? Now here, we mentioned yesterday a little bit, it's not from outside, it has to be from inside. It has to be not changing everything outside. If our true happiness or the end of the suffering depended on creating everything right outside and changing everything, then it would not have been possible. Because it's not possible for us to control everything outside. And even if we can do that, it will change. So therefore, it is through that way, it's not possible to find a lasting peace and happiness. So therefore, the only way is to change from within. So if I can transform my way of experiencing myself, and through that alone, I can find the lasting peace and happiness, and that's the understanding. So therefore, then Buddha taught these Four Noble Truths. What are actually the causes of the suffering, and what are the sufferings and the causes of the suffering, and what are the, is there a possibility to be free from that, free from the suffering or the causes of the sufferings, and what are the path or the methods or the way to attain that. So this is the Four Noble Truths that Buddha taught. And through these Four Noble Truths, he explained the whole teaching, whole path. Now here, usually the approach is like that, is to understand the suffering, to understand the causes of the sufferings, and then to see, how these causes can be changed, can be transformed or not. And if you find there is a possibility, then how to do that. Now in this book, the approach is a little bit different. The approach starts with the Buddha nature. Yesterday we said that the nature of samsara is also emptiness. The nature of nirvana is also emptiness. It's same. But the difference is how we perceive it. If we perceive it as the things as they really are, then we are free from suffering, free from samsara. And if we don't see them as they are, then we have the samsaric state of mind, we have sufferings. Now here, when we talk about the Buddha nature, he says that actually everybody is sent. Whether you are enlightened being or you are not enlightened, the way you are is same. But the way you experience yourself is different. If I know how to experience myself in the right way, then I am Buddha. If I don't know how to experience myself in the right way, then I am a samsaric being. There's nothing wrong with the way I am, but there is something wrong with the way I perceive it, I experience it. So therefore, only thing we need to do to transform ourselves is to not change something basically, but to change our perception and the way we experience ourselves. So that's the understanding of Buddha nature.
Ta tekst, okras osvoboditve, torej že včeraj smo govorili o tem, da o osnovni želji ali smislu, namenu vseh biti, ki je v tem, da bi se osvobodili trpljenja in da bi dosegli trajen mir in srečo. In včeraj smo tudi omenili, da ne gre za to, da se ne bi trudili v tej smeri, da ne bi delali najboljše, kar je v naši moči. In vendar ne dobimo, ne uspemo doseči tega cilja, da bi se osvobodili trpenja in dosegli trajno srečo in mir. In to je zaradi tega, ker ne vemo, kako priti do tega. Zato je glavni namen, ali pa glavno učenje Bude je bilo to. In njegovo glavno odkritje je bilo to, da ne samo, da je možno, in ne samo to, da je da lahko najdemo pot, kako zmanjšati trpljenje in vse neprijetne izkušnje, ampak da jih lahko popolnoma izkoreninimo, da lahko popolnoma izkoreninimo trpljenje in da lahko izkusimo najvišji trajen mir in trajno srečo. In ta izkušnja, to je glavni namen prakse, to je glavni cilj. In zdaj, kako priti do tega, kakšno pot? Včeraj smo govorili o tem, da ne gre za to, da bi to lahko dosegli zunaj sebe. To lahko najdemo samo v sebi, v samem sebi. Ne gre poskušati spremeniti tega, kar je okoli nas, naših okoliščin, tega, kar se dogaja zunaj. Če bi sreča in trpljenje, če bi bilo odvisno od zunanjih okoliščin, od tega, kar je zunaj nas, potem ne bi nikoli, v resnici ne bi bilo možno doseči trajnega miru in sreče. Zaradi tega, ker prvič je nemogoče kontrolirati vse, kar se dogaja zunaj nas. In tudi, če bi nam to uspelo, da bi nekako uspeli kontrolirati vse okoliščine, vse tisto, kar je zunaj, se tudi vse to neprestano spreminja. Tako da je edini način, edina možnost spremembe je znotraj nas samih. Tako, da spremenimo način, kako doživljamo sami sebe. In potem pravi Rinpoče, da ponovadi se predstavlja pot na način 4 plemenitih resnic, kjer najprej ugotovimo, da se trpljenje obstaja, oziroma ugotavljamo, kaj je trpljenje, ugotovimo, kaj je razlog temu, potem razmišljamo o tem, ali je možno se osvoboditi vzrokov, ki povzročajo trpljenje. In na koncu govorijo ta učenja o poti ali metodi, načinu, kako izkorenimo trpljenje. In na ta način je Buda skozi 4 plemenite resnice pojasnil ali opisal popolno pot do osvoboditve in razsvetljenja. In ponavadi je tak pristop, se pravi, ugotovimo, da je trpljenje obstaja, oziroma ugotovimo, kaj je razlog, in ugotovimo, kako je možno spremeniti te, oziroma ali je možno in kako je možno spremeniti vzroke, ki povzročajo trpljenje. Medtem ko v tej knjigi, ki jo obravnavamo, v Krasu osvoboditve, je pristop malce drugačen in začne se učenje z Budovo naravo. Včeraj smo govorili o tem, da je narava samsare in nirvane enaka, da v obeh primerih samsare in nirvane imata narava praznine. In edina razlika je v tem, kako mi to doživljamo, kakšna je naša percepcija. Če vidimo stvari take, kot so, potem smo osvobojeni trpljenja. Če pa ne vidimo stvari takšnih, kakršni so, potem je to samsara, se nahajamo v samsaričnem stanju uma in posledice tega trpljenja. Tudi, kar se tiče Budove narave, kar se tega tiče, smo vsi enaki. Razsvetljena bitja in vsi ostali samsarična bitja, ne glede na to, ali smo razsvetljeni ali ne, to, kako smo, kako zares smo, je enako. Tudi način, kako doživljamo sami sebe, je različen. In če vem, kako pravilno videti samega sebe, tako kot sem, v tem primeru sem Buda, sem razsvetljen. In če tega ne vem, potem sem samsarično bitje, ujeto trpljenje zaradi napačne percepcije. Se pravi, pot je v tem, ne da nekaj spreminjamo, ampak da spreminjamo stvari, ampak da spremenimo našo percepcijo, da spremenimo način, kako doživljamo sami sebe, in to pomeni razumeti Budovo naravo.
Generally, when Buddha taught the Four Noble Truths, he said there is suffering, there is cause of suffering, there is cessation of suffering, and there is path to the cessation of suffering. So the teaching starts with suffering. And then sometimes people say that Buddhists believe the life is suffering. And then sometimes people get the wrong idea that all Buddhists must only think about suffering. And then, very serious kind of people. That's not the idea. The idea is there is problems, there is suffering, but the Buddhists are very optimistic. Very, very optimistic. They're too optimistic. It's a little bit like this, they say optimistic, what is the opposite of that? Pessimistic, realistic, and spiritualistic. Spiritualistic? Yeah. So I once saw a photo of these four depictions. 4 beer glasses. The first is optimistic. That is like half full. Upper part is full, lower part is empty. So half full. Then pessimistic, half empty. That's half full but half empty. Then realistic, totally empty. That's realistic. And then spiritualistic. That is, it's not only full, but there is another full on top. So it's a little bit like that. So the idea is that it's not only possible to free ourselves from suffering, but there is an essence in us where it is completely, fully, good. All the positive qualities like wisdom, compassion, power of healing, power of knowing, all these things are within ourselves. We have those positive qualities naturally. That's the understanding. And that's the, and this is the idea that if we don't have that, then we can't develop. That's why when Buddha gave the meditation instructions, the first thing he did was very simple, like demonstration. He asked people, they were sitting in the Ganges River, near the Ganges River, and then he asked them to bring a pot of water from the Ganges. So they brought a pot of water. And then he said, is this water drinkable? Is it clean? They looked and they said, no. The Ganges was polluted even that time. And then he said, well, keep it like that. Keep it, just leave it there. So then he was talking about other things, telling stories and things like that. And then after a while he said, now look at the water. Is it drinkable? And now then look. He said, yes, now it's clean. Because all the kind of the dust and all these things settled down and the water is clean. And he says, how come? The water was not clean before and now it's clean. They said, because the nature of water is drinkable. Its quality is is not polluted. It's pure drinkable water. But when it was mixed up with sand and all other things, then it became polluted. So when you leave it on its own naturally, then all these things just go away, and then the true nature of water comes out. So that's why it's drinkable now. So he says it's the same thing, same way with your mind. The quality of mind is not a problem. It's a wisdom, it's compassion, it's all positive things, but it's mixed up, it's polluted now. So what you have to do to get rid of it is to let it remain undisturbed for a while, and then its natural qualities will come out. So that's how we taught meditation first. So therefore, in this same way, the way we are in its true nature is no problem. But it has been polluted. It has been, there's lots of ignorance, there's lots of misunderstanding, there's lots of unclarity, and that's why, the problem. So therefore, but it is not like when we say there is the Buddha nature, then sometimes people think that we have been Buddha before, and then we kind of fell down. And that's not the understanding from Buddhism. As we studied it's not that it was once we were completely Buddha and then we we fell down. It's not like that. We have those qualities, but we don't understand it. We have not recovered. We didn't discover it. We didn't understand it. Like I tell you a story from Portugal, that I was in Portugal a few days ago, and he told me a story. I have lots of Portuguese stories, because I go there last many years, every year. And there is a region of Portugal called Alentejo, very special region. And they have lots of stories, because their people there are supposed to be a little bit special. At least other people don't think they're supposed to be very lazy. And there are many stories, but that I'm not going to tell you now. I'll tell you later. But this is a story. So there was a man, and he is a shepherd. He had lots of sheep. And then he just looked after sheep, and then at night he used to sleep. There was a pillar, and he used to sleep near the pillar, and then all the sheep used to sleep around him. And many times he used to have a dream. And in this dream, he dreamed that he went, that you have to go to Lisbon. If you go to Lisbon, you will find the treasure. But he was, from Alentejo, so he didn't get together to go to Lisbon. But he got this dream repeatedly, again and again and again. And one day he decided to go to Lisbon. So he arranged some of his friends to look after the sheep. And then he took the train and went to Lisbon. It took only 2 hours. So he went to Lisbon, and then he didn't know where to go, so he was just kind of going around a little bit confused. And then he met a policeman. The policeman saw that he's from Alentejo. He didn't know where to go, so he says, "Where do you want to go?" He says, "I don't know. Tell me if you want to go somewhere. If you don't know where to go, I will tell you." He says, "But no, I have nowhere to go. I just got this dream again and again." saying that, you have to go to Lisbon. If you go to Lisbon, then you will find the treasure. But I don't know where to go. I just, am here. And the policeman said, oh, that doesn't matter, because I also have this kind of dreams. I had a dream that in some place in Alan Cage, there is a pillar. There is a pillar, and then there is a shepherd sleeping next to the pillar, and there's sheep also sleeping around him. And then I hear the sound that if you dig up near the pillar, you will find the treasure. So then he said, oh, thank you very much. That's all. That's enough. So he takes the train back, and then he goes to his pillar and digs up next to the pillar. He finds the treasure. So there are lots of stories like that all over the world. That your treasure is actually under your bed or under your house, or but you have to learn it's there from somewhere else. So this is a kind of international. There's so many stories of this kind, and that's the idea that we have our own treasure. It's there, but we never know. We don't know. So we need to kind of find out. We need to learn how to look for that and how to actually find out. It's not saying that we already are very good. We already have lots of, sometimes people say that if you are already, have Buddha nature, then why everybody is not so kind and not so nice and not so good? It's not saying that everybody is it is not like that. But there is a possibility. If we want to develop, we can develop. We can find it. And some people saying that, well, the children must be already, really compassionate and kind. So then afterwards, when you grow up, you become that. It's also not like that. From Buddhist point of view, the children are as much, children are regarded as more or less small adults. They have their own, they are very much more innocent than us, of course, but they have their own habitual tendencies and they have their own, things like that. So this is the Buddha nature. There is the possibility. Our true nature is nothing wrong, but our perception is wrong. That's the beginning. There is a possibility. There's now here, so therefore, this book is presented in this way, starting with Buddha nature. There is the possibility, there is our true nature is nothing wrong, but then if we want to kind of experience that, then we have to do something about it. We have to learn to find it. We have to practice. We have to train. So therefore, now as a human being, we have the capacity to think, capacity to explore, capacity to learn. So therefore, it's the right kind of the right life form, very good life form as human beings. So therefore, we must appreciate human life. But then, even as human beings, we need, we need to learn. We need to find people and the path that would, point out to us how to explore this this path, this understanding, experience. So therefore, we need a proper guidance, proper teacher. So this third one. And then we need to learn from that, from those teachers or those guides, all the methods, all the methods on how to transform ourselves. So that's the whole, that's the whole Dharma, the methods, all the practices. And then, what is the result of the practice of these methods? And then activities. What good will it do to myself and to others? So in this way, the 6 things, and these 6 kind of points, the whole book is presented, and also the whole Buddhism, you can say, is presented.
Spet smo nasplošno, je budizem predstavljen skozi 4 plemenite resnice. In sicer govorimo o tem, da trpljenje je, o tem, kaj je vzrok temu trpljenju, o koncu trpljenja in o možnosti konca trpljenja in poti, ki pelje do tega. In ker se ta opis ponovadi začne z trpljenjem, potem nekateri ljudje včasih narobe razumejo, da budisti izmeri govorimo o tem, da je življenje trpljenje in da vsi budisti neprestano razmišljamo samo o trpljenju in da smo zelo resni ljudje. In ta ideja pravzaprav ni pravilna. Čeprav pomislimo, pravim pa, če smo budisti zelo optimistični, pravzaprav celo preveč optimistični. In potem je rekel, da je enkrat videl eno fotografijo, ki govori o optimistu, pesimistu, realistu in pa človeku, ki zelo duhovno doživlja svet. In tam je bila slika 4 kozarcev s pivom in prvo pivo je bilo, prvi kozarec je bil napol poln in je opisuje optimista, ki vidi kozarc kot napol poln. Potem naslednji kozarc je bil ravno tako napol poln, ampak v resnici pesimist ga potem vidi napol praznega. Potem realist, tam je bil prazen kozarc, da ni bilo nič noter, ampak duhovnejše pa bilo tako, da je bilo polno kozarc piva in ne sem to še en gor na vrhu tega sta 2 kozarca piva. In tako nekako smo je optimističen pogled budizmu. Se pravi, ne samo to, da je možno se osvoboditi trpljenja, ampak je naše samo bistvo je popolnoma dobro. Naša resnična narava, naše resnično bistvo je modrost, je sočutje, vsa moč ozdravljenja, vse znanje, vse to se že nahaja v nas. Vse pozitivne kvalitete so že naravno prisotne. Kajti, če to ne bi bilo tako, teh kvalitet ne bi mogli umetno razviti. In na ta način je tudi Buda najprej učil meditacijo. Prva stvar, ki jo je pokazal, enkrat je sedel s svojimi učenci na obrežju reke Ganges in je pokazal preprost primer. Ljudi je prosil, da prinesejo vodo iz Gangesa in so prinesli en vrč vode in jih je vprašal, je ta voda čista, lahko pijemo, in so rekli ne, ker je bila polna peska, že takrat je bil Ganges očitno zelo umazan. In potem je rekel, dobro, pustite tukaj, da to vodo zaenkrat stati, in je začel razlagati o drugih stvarih, pripovedoval je zgodbice Potem čez nekaj časa je rekel, no zdaj pa pogledajte ta vrč vode. A je voda zdaj čista? In ker se mu zemlja poslila, so rekli, ja, zdaj pa je. Zdaj se pa poleglo, ves pesek se je poleglo na dno vrča in na vrhu je ostala čista voda. In Buda jih je vprašal, kako je to možno. In to je zato, ker je sama narava vode, da je čista, da je pitna, da ni umazana, da ni onesnažena. Ampak, kadar je pa zmešana z nečistočami, z peskom in raznimi nečistimi stvarmi, takrat se zdi, da je nečista. In če samo pustimo, se naravno poleže in takrat pride na dan ena resnična narava. Enako je z umom. Vse kvalitete uma, modrost, sočutje, so že naravno prisotne, so tam. Ampak, ker so zmešane z nečistočami, ker je naš onesnažen, niso očitne. In če pustimo naš da se pride nazaj v svoje naravno stanje, da ga ne motimo, potem same naravno se manifestirajo, pridejo na dan vse te pozitivne kvalitete uma. Se pravi, z resnično naravo našega uma ni nobenega problema. Prav, resnična narava uma je popolnoma čista in poseduje vse pozitivne kvalitete, ampak vse nečistoče, vse nejasnosti, nerazumevanje, nevednost povzročajo probleme. To je problem. In včasih ljudje razumejo, kot da, če govorimo o Budovi naravi, da to pomeni, da smo najprej že bili Bude, pa smo pa nekako pozabili, ali pa da je to zgledelo, to zavedanje, in smo postali samsarična bite in smo nekako padli dol. Ampak ni tako. Imamo vse te kvalitete so prisotne, ampak ker jih nismo razumeli, ker jih še nismo odkrili, pač je tako, kot je. In potem je Rinpoče povedal eno zgodbo iz Portugalske, kjer je še pred nekaj dnevi učil. In pravi Rinpoče, da ve veliko zgodbic, pozna veliko portugalskih zgodbic, ker že dolgo časa tam uči. In ta zgodbica v nekem možakarju iz pokrajine Alentež. What's the region? Alentež?
Yeah. Alentež. That's in the middle of Portugal.
Na sredi Portugalske je ena pokrajina, Alentež, in ostali Portugalci malo norčujejo iz ljudi, ki živijo tam, ker so znani kot tako, da so malo leni. No, in tam je živel en moški, en pastir, in tam je imel svoje ovce in skupaj z njimi spal v svoji hiši ob enem takem velikem stebru in tam ovce so ležali okoli njega in je zadovoljno živel svoje življenje in pasel ovce. No, ampak se mu je pa dogajalo to, da so se mu kar naprej ponavljale neke sanje. In v teh sanjah mu je glas rekel, da ne gre v Lizbono in da bo tam našel zaklad. In ker je bil iz te pokrajine Alentež, on ni nič naredil s tem in pač ni šel v Lizbono, ampak ker so se te sanje kar naprej ponavljale, se pa nekega dne res odločil, dobro, pa gremo v Lizbono in prosim je par prijateljev, da popazijo na njegove ovce, se usedel na vlak in se peljal celi 2 uri do Lizbone in potem je stopil dol z vlaka in začel tavati po Lizboni, ker v resnici ni vedel nič drugega kot to, da je v sanjah pač mu bilo rečeno, da je zaklad v Lizboni. No in potem ga je zagledal en policaj in ker je videl, da je iz Alenteža in malo zmeden je rekel, da kaj pa delaš ti, kaj pa iščeš. Ne? In on je odgovoril, da v bistvu ne ve, kam gre, ne? Kam bi rad prišel, da je samo imel te sanje, ne? Ker mu je bilo naročeno, da ne gre v Alentež in da bo tam našel zaklad. In policaj je rekel, ok, ni problema, je rekel, poslušaj, jaz sem tudi imel ene sanje, ne? In sem sanjal o tem, da je v Alentežu en kraj, kjer je ena hiša in tam živi en pastir in tam zraven stebra v njegovi hiši je zakopan zaklad. In potem je ta pastir rekel, a to je bilo to, hvala lepa, se zahvalil policaju, sem odpeljal nazaj domov in skopal tam zraven stebra in našel svoj zaklad. In Rinpoche pravi, da po celem svetu obstajajo take zgodbe. To je kot nekako univerzalno vedenje, da nekako tisto, kar iščemo, je že pri nas samih, ne vem, pod našo posteljo, v naši hiši. Zaklad je že pri nas. Ampak na nek način moramo to zvedeti od drugih. In spravi zaklad je že tam, samo mi ne vemo, da je tam. In to, kar se moramo naučiti, kako ga najdeti, kako pogledati, kje je in kako ga najdeti. Sicer to samo na sebi ne pomeni, da je zdaj že kar vse v redu. Ne? Zdaj imamo zaklad, vsi imamo Budovo naravo, ampak zakaj potem nismo vsi prijazni in dobri in zakaj se čudne in grde stvari dogajajo na svetu. In zaradi tega, ker to obstaja kot možnost, to obstaja kot nekaj, kar lahko razvijemo, vse te pozitivne kvalitete, oziroma jih odkrijemo, samo na sebi pa še ni prisotno. In tudi prav Rinpoche včasih imajo ljudje razumevanje, da ja, če bi se pa vrnil nazaj, da bi bil kot otrok, otroci so pa čisti in je že vse tako, kot bi moralo biti, prav Rinpoche, da ne, da v budizmu se gleda na otroke kot na majhne odrasle ljudi, ki imajo ravno tako svoje tendence, ravno tako imajo svoje navade, vzorce odprej in sami na sebi niso nič bolj razsvetljeni, kot smo mi. Torej, Budova narava je naša resnična narava. Resnična narava in z resnično naravo našega uma ni nič narobe. Ampak percepcija, to, kako doživljamo to, kar je napačna, je zgrešena. In možnost, ta Budova narava je možnost, da odkrivamo stvari, kako zares so. In v tej knjigi je pot predstavljena na ta način. Se pravi, da se začne z našo resnično naravo, z Budovo naravo našega uma, kot možnostjo, kot dejstvom, da z nami ni nič narobe, da z resnično najglobljo naravo na samih ni nič narobe. In če lahko izkusimo to, potem s tem rešimo probleme. In potem naprej razlaga o tem, kaj je potrebno storiti, če se treba naučiti, kaj je potrebno odkriti, kako moramo trenirati, kaj moramo prakticirati, zato da pridemo do tega cilja. In zato, da bi prišli do tega cilja, je to, da smo tukaj v tem človeškem življenju najboljše možno izhodišče. Kot ljudje lahko razmišljamo, lahko odkrivamo, lahko se učimo in človeško življenje je najboljša oziroma najbolj idealna življenjska oblika in zato moramo biti hvaležni oziroma moramo znati ceniti to človeško življenje. Ampak to še ni dovolj, se pravi, to možnost imamo, osnova je naša Budova narava ali pa resnična narava našega uma, možnost je, da kot ljudje to odkrijemo, vendar tudi kljub temu se moramo še zmeraj učiti. Najti moramo ljudi, ki nas lahko vodijo, najti moramo pot. In ljudi, ki poznajo pot in nam lahko pokažejo pot in lahko pokažejo na našo Budovo naravo in s tem nam omogočijo razumevanje in prinesejo na nas izkušnjo. Zato rabimo pravilnega vodnika ali pa pravilnega učitelja oziroma usposobljenega učitelja, da nam to pokaže. In potem naslednja, tretja stvar, ki je, da se moramo naučiti, kako, se pravi, ne, to je tretja stvar, učitelj je tretja stvar in četrta stvar je, da se moramo naučiti, kakšne metode uporabiti in to je dharma, to je Budova pot, kako pridemo do tega, do odkritja svoje resnične narave. In potem knjiga opisuje še rezultate, se pravi, kaj je posledica vsega tega, kaj se zgodi na koncu, se pravi, kakšne rezultate, kaj dobrega sledi z vsega tega zame in za vse ostale. In na ta način knjiga opisuje celotno pregled celotne poti budizma.
You know, this I'll tell you a story from Alentejo. I told you they're very lazy. One example was that once there were two friends, and then one friend was lying down under a tree, this fig tree, opening his mouth, and then a fig, a ripe fig, fell down, went into his mouth, and then he was still like this with his, fig in his mouth. And then his friend came out and he says, "What are you doing?" "I'm expecting a fig to fall in my mouth." And he said, "But there is already a fig in your mouth." "Yes, but I want another one to fall out so that it pushes me into So you even can't just, chew it. It needs another one to push it out.
Ja, prav Rinpoče zdaj, ki že govori o teh zgodbicah iz Alenteja, ko so ti ljudje ne bi bili tako leni, prav sta bila enkrat dva prijatelja in en je ležal pod figo z odprtimi usti in je ležal, dokler mu ni figa padla naravnost v usta. Potem je tako ostala figa in potem je ta drug prijatelj prišel in je rekel, ja, kaj pa delaš, ne? In je ta rekel, ja, čakam, da mi pade figo v usta. Pa prav, pa sej že imaš eno figo glede v ustih. Pa prav, ja, ampak čakam, da zdaj še ena dol pade, pa da to zbije dol, da mi bo zdrknila po grlu.
So these are the kind of the 6 points. That is the whole kind of subject of the book. And now we go through the one by one. And first is the Buddha nature. So many times people ask me that what is a Buddha? What is enlightenment? Have you seen somebody who is enlightened? I say, I don't know. I'm not enlightened. So if I see somebody, who says he's enlightened, then I doubt that he's enlightened. If he says he's not enlightened, then I don't know whether he's enlightened or not enlightened. So I can't say. But I think, I know that there are lots of very compassionate beings. And those very great compassionate beings, I feel, must be not, even if not totally enlightened, must be very higher. Because when we describe an enlightened being, is someone who has developed one's wisdom and compassion to the utmost level. That's regarded as enlightenment. Compassion we can understand, more or less. Wisdom we don't understand. But what is wisdom in essence? It's not knowledge, it's not scholarship, it's not information. Wisdom is is a practical knowledge, that I know how to deal with anything, how to work or how to be in any situation without any problem. I think that is wisdom. So when you have wisdom, then you have no problem for yourself. So therefore, recently, I think on the 77th birthday celebration of His Holiness Dalai Lama, he said that because of all my practices in all my life, now whatever happens, whatever disturbances happens around me, it cannot really disturb my mind. I think that's what wisdom is about. And probably we have seen people of this kind. I think maybe I have seen also. You know Tenkan Rinpoche, who passed away recently. I don't know how many of you know him, but he was such a wonderful man. So nice, so kind. When you go to see him, you just love him. He's so nice. He never said no to anything. He's always kind, he's always happy, he's always... I've been to see him after he took up one leg. I have also seen him after he took up another leg, both legs, no fingers, no eye, but very happy. Recently, it was last year, just before he took off the second leg, they did his 80th birthday celebration in Singapore. And there was a student of mine from Europe, and she participated in there. And afterwards she wrote me. She said she is shocked what he said. What he said was, at this birthday party, oh, he said, I am so grateful, I am so happy that in my life I never had any obstacles. And she could see that he has no eyes, and there's no fingers, and no leg, and another leg. So he said, what is obstacle if this is not obstacle? But actually, in a way, I think it was nothing. It was nothing for him. It was not really an obstacle in a way, because when even he died, there was no problem. He was so happy. I think some of you must have heard about his how he died. It was very special. But there are many others also who die in the same way. He was taken to hospital for 2 days. He had problem with his heart and things like that. And then he insisted he wanted to go back to his monastery. So they took him back. I think it was on 28th of March, I think. And then he said that he wanted to see all the responsible people of the monastery, because he wanted to give them instructions after he leaves. So they tried to gather them, and they brought these 8 people together, the main people. And when they arrived, he was fast asleep. So they were waiting. And then after midnight, sometime after midnight, he woke up. And then he stood up like this, he sat up. And then he told them, he instructed them. He said, now it's time for me to go. So he gave them all instructions on how to run the monastery. He made changes in the administration. He kind of instructed them how to do whatever, after his, how to cremate him, all kind of instructions. Then he told them, he said that, oh, maybe you will forget, you must record, so bring the recorders. He made them to record. And then after all this, then he said, okay, now I want to see some people. So he called his niece and some other people. So he saw them, he spoke to them. And then he sat like that whole day, just drinking some juice and things like that. And they thought that he had now no problem, because he was having no pain, no nothing, just like that, and sitting up all the time. And then he wanted to send greetings to all his friends. He made, wrote letters to all his individuals, centers, and asking, making them greetings, farewell, and things like that. And then like that whole day, and then whole night, and then around 1 o'clock in the night, middle of the night, then he said, well, now I think it's time for me to go, because I see my teachers I can see. Former Sanjay Rinpoche, former, like Yamuna Kongtrul and things like that. And then around 2 o'clock, and then Sanjay Rinpoche came, and now he was really kind of going into samadhi. Then he read out this reminder of the nature of the mind. And then he kind of corrected his posture once more, and then he went into samadhi. So maybe you have seen the photos. Just sit like this, completely. I, for instance, even during teachings of His Holiness Dalai Lama, I go to sleep. And when I got to sleep, I almost fall down. It's a disgrace. I feel so embarrassed. Many times it happened. They give me honor and let me sit on the dais, sometimes. And many times I'm sitting behind the translator. I think they put me there purposefully. So I'm sitting behind the translator, and then if there is not this too big, TV screens, then it's okay. There's these two big screens, and then everyone, 10,000, 20,000 people can see me. And still I cannot help. It's totally, embarrassing. But he was like sitting like this for 6 days or something like that, after he's dead. So there are lots of this kind of people happening everywhere. I think they are enlightened. They're full, they have no problem in the life, and they have no problem in the death. So must be enlightened, I think that's what we call enlightenment. Some scientists did brain scanning of some of these lamas. I don't know whether they did Tengar Rinpoche, maybe not, but some other lamas. They did Mingyur Rinpoche, I think he came here. And they found out that Mingyur Rinpoche was 800 times happier than any normal person. It's true. First time they did this, they didn't know what was that. They thought that something wrong with the machine. And then I don't think that they had too many of these machines even in America. So they asked some other machines to do it, and then many times. So they kept all these things secret for several years actually. And then, however many times you did, you had the same result, and whichever, you know. So some lamas, they say, are 1,000 times happier than the other people. So it's like, so that's the kind of possibility, I think. If you practice, if you really learn how to do that, then there's this kind of possibility to transform yourself. That's what we're talking about, the enlightenment, the Buddha, or things like that. And there, what he's saying here, the Buddha said is that everybody has that capacity. Every being has that capacity to, because the nature of the mind, the nature of the mind is sand, its nature is emptiness. Nature is emptiness. We will talk about emptiness later. I don't want to talk about emptiness because it's too difficult. If you knew about emptiness, then you have understood something. So that's why I don't talk too much about emptiness usually. There is something, there was a teacher who was explaining something, I think in mathematics something, to the students. And he said, I explained completely clearly to them first time, they didn't understand. Then I explained to them second time, even more clearly. Still, they didn't understand. When I tried to explain third time, then I understood. So if I explain to you, you will not understand. Because I don't understand.
Zdaj smo govorili o teh 6 točkah, smo naredili pregled in zdaj bomo šli po teh točkah ena po ena. In prva točka je...
Buddha nature, pressure in life, the teacher, the methods, then the result, and then activities. Yes.
Okay, pozabil sem prej še povedati 6 točke in 5. je kakšen je rezultat, se pravi korist, ki prinese razsvetljenje za nas in za druge. 6. točka je pa aktivnosti, ki potem sledijo iz tega, oziroma kako delujemo, ko pridemo do konca poti. Se pravi, prva točka je Budova narava. In velikokrat pravi Rinpoče, da ljudje sprašujejo o tem, kaj je to Buda, kakšen je razsvetljen človek. Sprašujejo Rinpoče, če je že kdaj videl kakšnega razsvetljenega človeka. In pravi Rinpoče, da ne ve v bistvu, ker pravi, jaz nisem razsvetljen in zdaj, če bi srečal koga, ki bi trdil, da je razsvetljen, bi verjetno malo dvomil to. Če bi pa rekel, da ni, pa potem pa ne bi mogel vedeti. Tako da res ne zna reči. Ampak ve pa, da obstaja mnogo zelo sočutnih biti, da jih je tudi sam srečal. In pravi, da tisti, pri katerih lahko vidimo, da so razvili zelo močno sočutje, lahko rečemo, da čeprav mogoče niso popolnoma razsvetljeni, ampak da so pa mogoče zelo daleč že na poti. In kadar opisujemo to stanje razsvetljenja, ponovno smer govorimo o tem, da je to modrost in sočutje, ki sta bila razvita do popolnosti in da je to razsvetljenje. In sočutje lahko vidimo, lahko razumemo. Modrost je pa nekaj, kar ni lahko razumeti. In zato, ker samo bistvo, esenca modrosti ni neko znanje, neko učenje, nekaj, kar se lahko naučimo, ni informacija. Gre bolj za praktično znanje, za to, kako se soočamo, kako delamo s čemarkoli, kar nam pride na pot, z vsako situacijo, v kateri se znajdemo. In kadar lahko karkoli nam že pride naproti, se s tem soočimo in nimamo s tem nikakršnega problema, potem je to na nek način razsvetljenje. In kadar imamo modrost, pomeni, da smo pri sebi, da smo presegli probleme. Pravi, da se spomni, ko je bilo praznovanje 77. rojstnega dne njegove svetosti Dalaj Lame, je Dalaj Lama rekel, da dela prakso, trenira že celo življenje in da se mu zdi, da zdaj karkoli mu že pride na pot, da ga ne more zmotiti, da ne more vršiti njegovega, da ga ne more vršiti iz tira, oziroma teže. Verjetno ste videli take ljudi, ali pa smo vsi videli, in pa če pravi, da je tudi sam videl take ljudi, ki so modri in njihovo življenje, pa se zdi, da nimajo problema z ničemer. Potem je omenil primer Tenga Rinpoče, mojstra, ki je učel Pari Nirvan, oziroma umrl letos, in pravi, vsakič, ko ga je videl, so bile naravno prisotne te njegove kvalitete, bil je izjemno topo prijazen, nikomor nikoli ni nikomor rekel ne, ga je zavrnil, bil je ljubeč, srečen, skozi je bil vesel, ne vem, so mu odrezali eno nogo, ko je bil vesel zaradi zdravstvenih problemov, ko je izgubil prste in je bil še meri vesel. Potem so mu odrezali še drugo nogo in ta njegovo veselje ni izginilo. In potem je ena učenka od Ringo Tulko Rinpoče se je odeležila proslave 80-letnice tega Rinpoče, tega človeka, o katerem govorimo. In pravi, da je bila šokirana nad tem, kar je izjavil. To je še prednji so se še poslavšali njegovi zdravstveni problemi in so mu odrezali še drugo nogo. In je rekel, da je zelo hvaležen, ker ni imel nikoli v življenju nikakršni sovir. In pravi ona, dobro, če zgubiš prste na rokah, če ti odrežejo nogo, če zgubiš vid, eno oko, kako, mislim, kaj pa potem so ovire, ne? Ampak za njega to očitno ni bil nikakršen problem in tudi, ko je umrl, je bil vesel. In mogoče ste nekateri slišali o tem, kakšen je bil način, kako je odšel. In je zelo poseben način, to ni posebno samo njega, mnogi veliki mojstri meditacije odhajajo na tak način. In sicer pač so ga odpeljali v bolnico zaradi zdravstvenih problemov, takrat so mu že odrezali obe noge, zaradi pač nekih zapleti srcem so bili. In potem je rekel, da prosim, odpeljte me nazaj v moj samostan. In potem je prosil, da pridejo k njemu ljudje, ki upravljajo samostanom, da bi jim dal navodila, kako voditi samostan po njegovem odhodu in kako ga kremirati in se pač vse te postopke, da jim da jasno navodila, da vejo, kako ravnati. No in potem so ti ljudje se zbrali, so prišli do njega, on je takrat spal in so tam čakali. Potem od 12, oziroma sredi noči, pol noči, se je zbudil, se je postavil po konci in jim je razložil, da je zdaj čas za njega, da odide in jim je ta izčrpno navodila začel dejati, kako ne ravnajo po njegovi smrti. In potem, to je trajalo in nekaj dni, potem je želel videti svoje sorodnike, svoje nečake in še nekatere druge ljudi, ki so mu blizu. In ko je tako sedel, so ljudje pomislili, aha, se zdaj pa v redu, ker je tako sedel, kot da je polno življenja in da ne bo nič. No, in potem je začel pisati še pisma svojim učencem v centrih in se poslavljal in zaprodeval. In potem je še določene druge ljudi so prišli k njemu in se pogovarjal z njimi. Potem, čez, kaj mislim, 3 dni, how many days did it last, this thing that Rinpoche?
About 1 week.
One he attended, not the 1 or 2 months, how long he attended to people.
About 2 days. 26, 28th evening, and then a kind of 30th night, 28th night.
Ja, se pravi, 2 dni, 28. je začel, s tem se je začel
One day night, you can say.
In potem je to trajalo, cel dan in celo noč. In potem je rekel, naslednjo noč, ob enih po noči, je rekel, aha, zdaj pa čas za mene, da grem, ker vidim svoje učitelje in je videl prejšnjega Sangha Njenpa Rinpocheja in prejšnjega Jamgon Kontrola Rinpocheja in Dilgo Khyentse Rinpocheja, ko jih je videl, je rekel, aha, to je zdaj znak, zdaj bom odšel. In takrat potem ob 2 je šel v samadhi, v meditativno koncentracijo. Najprej si je še prebral opomnik o resnični naravi uma in potem se je postavil v popoln položaj in stopil v samadhi, v meditativno koncentracijo. In prav, Rinpoche, da tudi v smrti ni bilo za tega Rinpoche nobenega problema, pa prav Rinpoche za njega samega ali pa za nas je pa tako, da imamo kar probleme sedeti že tako, v bistveno lažjih okoliščinah. In prav, da včasih po naučenih njegove svetosti Dalaj Lame, prav, da ga sicer zelo sramo, da on včasih zaspi in potem se njegovo telo posede in da se je to zgodilo že precejkrat. Tako da prav, da ga ponovadi posedijo v zadnji za prevajalca in verjetno prav, da je to z določenim namenom. In zdaj, če ni nekakršnih ekranov, da se to ne prenaša na ekrane s kamerami, potem je v redu, ampak drugače pa prav, da je pa jasno vidno, kaj se dogaja z njim in potem 10,000 ljudi lahko ali pa 20,000 ljudi lahko vidi, kako on zaspi tam spet reče. Prav, da me je zelo neroden, da ga je zelo slavno zaradi tega, ampak da si ne more pomagati. In potem ga Rinpoche je pa vstal v tem meditativnem stanju, potem, ko je že umrl, ko je njegovo telo že nehalo funkcionirati, je sedel še 6 dni v meditativni koncentraciji in v popolnem sedenju. In pravi Rinpoche, da njemu se pa zdi, tako misli, da pač razsvetljenje tisti, ki nima nikakršnega problema, nima problema z življenjem, nima problema s smrtjo. Prav, da verjetno je to tisto, kar bi lahko poimenovali razsvetljenje. Potem je še razlagal o tem, kako so delali teste z raznimi električnimi napravami, znanstveniki in so opazovali možganske valove raznih mojstrov meditacije, lam in tudi eden od učiteljev, ki je bil tudi pri nas, Mingyur Rinpoche, tudi njega so merili in so ugotovili s temi stroji, da je 800-krat bolj srečen kot poprečen človek. Zdaj, najprej niso mogli sprejeti teh rezultatov, so rekli, da to ni. Ampak to so ponavljali te eksperimente še z drugimi merilnimi napravami in to je trajalo nekaj časa, nekaj let in pač očitno so potrdili te rezultate. Prav Rinpoche, potem so pa eni lami, ki so še celo 1000-krat bolj srečni od poprečnega človeka. In kar je pomembno, je, da vidimo v tem možnost, da če se naučimo nekaj, da če vadimo, če prakticiramo, potem lahko spremenimo svoje življenje, potem lahko spremenimo svojo percepcijo. In to je to, o čemer govorimo, to je v bistvu vseh teh naukov o razsvetljenju oziroma vseh teh stvari, o katerih je govoril Buda. In vsakdo ima možnost za to. Resnična narava uma je za vse enaka, je praznina. Pravi Rinpoche, da bomo o tem govorili malo kasneje, ker je precej težka tema in da če bi že to razumeli, to bi že kar precej vedeli, oziroma bi nekaj vedeli. Ampak potem je omenil še anekdoto o nekem učitelju matematike, ki je razlagal neko stvar iz matematike in je rekel, da prvič sem razložil zelo jasno učencem in niso razumeli. In potem sem drugič začel razlagati in sem poskušal biti še bolj jasen in še zmeraj niso razumeli. In potem sem začel tretjič razlagati, pa sem pa jaz dojel, kaj razlagam. Tako da prav, Rinpoche, če bi vam zdaj začel razlagati o praznini, ne boste razumeli, ker prav tudi sam nisem še čisto tam.
So here, they talk about three reasons. One, that the nature of, the whole thing is in my mind and the Buddha's mind, everything is emptiness, the same. That's why there's no difference. Everybody has the Buddha nature. Second, Buddha never said that, a Buddha is totally different. He says that the Buddha is just a human being, that he developed, and he kind of is somebody who has brought his natural, kind of qualities out. Nothing basically different. So Buddha never said, when Buddha talks about himself, he always says Tathagata, means who is gone in the way that the great masters of the past have gone. So somebody is just like any other human being, and not different. Only thing is that he developed himself. So therefore there is no difference between in essence a Buddha and a samsaric being is not difference in its essence. Third, that we all have that quality in us. However, some have more and some have less, but all of us has a little bit of wisdom and a little bit of compassion in us. So that's the seed. There's nobody who doesn't have some, some experience or some feeling of love or concern for somebody. However evil or however negative one person is. And that is the seed of compassion. We all have that. And however kind of stupid we are, we also have a little bit of knowing what's right and what's not wrong, what's right. So there is, of course, different levels. Some have more kind of awakened those qualities, more wisdom, more compassion. Some has less, but we all have some. And once we have that, then there is no reason why we cannot develop, we cannot train, we can train. So therefore, everybody has the Buddha nature. So therefore, it is possible that everybody can totally become like the Buddha, or end of the suffering, highest, learning how to be kind of totally, what we can say, have lasting peace and happiness, compassion, wisdom, and all these things. So that's the Buddha nature. So there is Buddha nature in us. There is possibility. So therefore, we all have, have the basic, qualities within us. We need to just develop that. So that understanding is the first chapter. So I think we stop here. And if any questions, most welcome.
So
The emptiness? There is no difference in nature. Three reasons why I asked for them. Yeah.
Okay. Se pravi, tukaj govorimo o treh razlogih. In sicer to, da je narava vseh stvari, prvi razlog je, da je narava vseh stvari enaka, da je praznina in da imamo vsi Budovo naravo. In Buda ni nikoli ni govoril o tem, da bi bil kaj posebenega, nikoli ni trdil, da je kaj posebnega, ampak je pač človek, ki je vse te kvalitete razvil do konca, se pravi vse pozitivne kvalitete do konca. In med njim in katerim koli ostalim čutečim bitjem ni nikakršne razlike, in kadar je opisal sebe imenoval z nazivom Tathagata, in tudi tisti, ki je odšel po poti prejšnjih velikih mojstrov. In na ta način je Buda enak, kot smo mi sami. Narava Bude ali pa narava samsaričnih biti ni različna. Se pravi, ta Budova narava je v nas, drugi razlog je, da nismo različni od Bude. In tretja je, da je ta kvaliteta, ker je že prisotna v nas, je bolj ali manj že se tudi manifestira. Nekateri imajo več ali manj modrosti, ampak prav vsak izmed nas ima nekaj modrosti, ima nekaj sočutja. To so semena. Vsak človek, ne glede na to, kako negativen je, kako negativno se vede ali negativnosti povzroča, ima nekoga rad. Obstaja nekdo, ki ga ima rad vsaj do neke mere, in to je seme nesebične ljubezni in sočutja. In potem, ne glede na to, kako neumni ali pa nevedni smo, ampak še zmeri prav vsak izmed nas in vsaj malo ve, kaj je prav in kaj je narobe. Ima to zmožnost razlikovanja in to je seme modrosti. Seveda obstajajo različne ravni, različni nivoji, koliko so dejansko že očitne manifestirane te razsvetljene kvalitete razsvetljenega uma, in nekateri imajo tega več ali manj, ampak prav vsak pa ima v sebi seme za to. In če obstajajo te osnove, se pravi, če obstajajo te semena sočutja in modrosti, potem ni nobenega razloga, zakaj jih ne bi mogli razvijati, zakaj ne bi mogli trenirati in to pripeljati do popolnosti. Vsak ima Budovo naravo in vsak ima možnost, prav za vsakega obstaja možnost, da doseže razsvetljenje, da postane Buda, da doseže trajen mir in srečo in da popolnoma razvije sočutje in modrost. Se pravi, ker ta Budova narava je že prisotna, potem obstaja možnost in vsi imamo te osnovne kvalitete že prisotne v nas in zaradi tega, ker so že prisotne, jih lahko razvijamo do popolnosti in o tem govori prvo poglavje knjige. In zdaj se bomo ustavili tukaj in nekaj časa namenili še vprašanje in odgovor.
May I ask, I'm sorry, because I have a question that is really bothering me a little bit.
Okay.
You know, I understand, okay, we all have this potential for complete wisdom and compassion.
Mm-hmm.
But then I don't understand reasons for it. You know, how come, you know? Because if you say, because emptiness of Dharmakaya pervades all, right? You know, then, and then second reason, because there is no differentiation. Then, you know, there is no differentiation between sentient and non-sentient, right, in emptiness. There is no differentiation between, like, these steps, you know, like, or that wall and, you know, any of us, you know, who has mind. There is no differentiation between having mind or not having mind. Buddha nature permeates all. If there is differentiation, it's not empty. So how that works? Is the wall going to get enlightened as well? The stairs? Or not?
I think when we talk about enlightenment, we are talking about an experience. So, when you talk about experience, then we can talk about anybody, anything that has an experience. Now, whether the wall has the experience or not, that is another question. So, if wall has experience, then wall can become enlightened. Why not? There is debates going on. There are debates going on whether, first, whether living things have consciousness or not. You know, sometimes we think that living beings, you know, like human beings and animals, have consciousness, but then living things do not have consciousness. There was even one time, I think, I heard there was even a question whether black people have soul or not. So like that, and then there's also a question about whether non-living things, you know, like wall or a pillar, has a consciousness or not. Now this maybe slowly we'll find out from the scientific way also. But from Buddhist point of view, it's not about whether the wall or the pillar has consciousness or not. It's about whether the consciousness gets identified with this wall or pillar or not. So if the consciousness gets identified with the wall and the pillar, then, you know, there's consciousness. Like our consciousness gets identified with our body, and then we are a being, we are a conscious being.
I understand that part, you know, kind of well, because I understand. I'm sorry.
Svinja, ali ću se sasvim izgubiti, ovo je teško. I said, I'm sorry, I will get completely lost. Če sem prav razumel vprašanje, zdaj, da vsi imamo potencial za popolno modrost in sočutje, ker dharma kaja, oziroma resnična narava vseh stvari, praznina, prežema vse, nobenega razlikovanja. Potem tudi ni razlikovanja med nečem, kar ima zavest, pa nečem, kar nima zavesti. In potem je bilo vprašanje, a se bo potem tudi zid razsvetljiv, a se bo stopnice razsvetljile ali ne. Približno. In potem je Rinpoče rekel, da ko govorimo o razsvetljenju, govorimo o izkušnji razsvetljenja. In zdaj, če ima lahko kdorkoli ali karkoli izkušnja ali ne, je vprašanje. Zdaj, če lahko zid izkuša, se pravi, če lahko zid ima izkušnjo, potem se lahko tudi zid razsvetli. In pravi, da so debate, obstajajo debate med tem, kaj sploh je zavest, oziroma kdo ima zavest. Včasih so šli te debate tako deleč celo, da imajo stvari zavest ali nimajo stvari zavest v redu, ampak še med samimi živimi bitji je prihajalo do tako bizarnih stvari, da so se ljudje sprašvali, a imajo črnci dušo. In poleg tega obstaja ali pa se, v znanstvenem svetu traja in teče debata o tem, ali imajo nežive stvari zavest. In pravi, da mogoče bo enkrat ugotovili znanstveniki s svojimi metodami, pač kitajska, ampak budizem ne gleda na te stvari na tak način, gleda na način, da ne sprašuje se, ali ima zavest, ali ima steber zavest, ali ne, ampak se sprašuje, ali se lahko zavest identificira s tem stebrom. In v tem smislu, če se to zgodi, podobno potem je dal primer telesa, imamo telo in če se zavest identificira s tem telesom, potem telo ima zavest na tak način.
I think about emptiness, why emptiness is important, is like this. We, the samsaric mind is when I feel that there is something called me, who is the kind of owner or experiencer of all the, thoughts and emotions and experiences and things like that. And that experiencer is something there, concrete, and something there, solid and independent of all these experiences. And so therefore, now I feel that, if something happens, I get hurt, something happens, so it's a very solid way of looking at myself, and sometimes we can call it dualistic view is coming out. But then if you look deeply, where is that? What is that I say me, which I feel is something independent? And then you find that there is nothing separate, there is nothing independent for me besides all the experiences. Thoughts come and go, emotions come and go. All these perceptions and everything is a kind of arisings, manifestations. But then besides those things, you can't find anything, or even those are not something independent, solid, and one. So when you don't find them, when that's the way you are, then what is it that you are so afraid of? What is it that you need? What is it that needs to be so much afraid of everything? What is it that needs to be so much kind of craving for everything? There's no one there who needs to be afraid, because there's no one there who can be destroyed. So when I deeply understand this, then why do I need to afraid? Why do I need to crave for something? There's nothing there can be touched, can be crushed, or can be destroyed, or can be. And actually, what I call me is lots of things, and these things change anyway. Momentarily, the body changes. Momentarily, thoughts changes, and besides that, there's nothing. So when I deeply understand this, then there is nothing there which is, where this wrong perception of aversion, attachment, all these things need to kind of, all these reactions need to happen. So therefore, it's natural. There's nothing there to be worried about. There's nothing there to be so much, So that's the way it is. So when you don't understand it, then you have all this fear and all this, craving and all this desire and all these problems. When you understand that, the way it is, you don't need to have all those things. So that's why. That's why they put in it. That's why it's like that. But then I think the third one is also important, because this is more, if you kind of don't go that far, then at least in a relative way, we can see that everybody has love and wish to have love, wish to be loved. That's the compassion. That's the basis of compassion. Usually we love only one person, 2 person, 3 person, like that. But that love is there. That can be extended to more and more, to everybody actually. Why not? And in the same way, as I discussed before, there is a little bit of knowing what is right, what is not right. So, maybe some are more developed, some are less developed, but so that's the nucleus of wisdom. And of course, we learn from each other. We get inspired from each other. Somebody was saying that if somebody yawns, everybody yawns. So there is empathy.
Zakaj je pomembna praznina? Kadar je samsaričen, pomeni, da čutam, se mi zdi, da obstaja nekaj, kar lahko imenujem jaz. Nekdo, ki si prisvoji vse izkušnje, tisti, ki izkuša vse misli, vsa čustva, vse, kar se pojavi. In tega, ki izkuša, razumemo kot, da je nekaj, kar je res tam. Nekaj, kar je trdno, nekaj, česar se lahko primemo in je neodvisno od vseh izkušenj, ki jih imamo, od vseh misli, od vseh čustv. In kadarkoli se nekaj zgodi, mogoče nekaj negativnega, nek problem, je način, kako gledamo na to, kar se dogaja, zelo tok. In tok je pogled na to, kaj sem, kdo sem. In včasih to imenujemo dualističen pogled. In če pa bi pogledali zelo globoko vase in bi rekli, bi se vprašali, kje je ta jaz in kaj je ta jaz? In ali obstaja na način, da je neodvisen od vsega tega, kar izkušam. Tem bi lahko ugotovili, da ne obstaja, da ne moramo najti ničesar, kar bi bilo ločeno in neodvisno od vseh teh izkušenj, od vseh misli, od vseh čustev. In poleg tega bi tudi opazili, da vse te izkušnje, vse te misli tudi same niso trdne. Vse te misli, vsa ta čustva prihajajo in odhajajo. Da se vzniknejo v zavesti, se pojavijo in spet odidejo. In tudi v njih ni ničesar trdnega in oprijemljivega. In ko to ugotovimo in ko ne moramo najti nekega neodvisnega, oprijemljivega jaza, potem je vprašanje, kaj je tisto, zakaj smo tako prestrašeni in kaj je tisto, kar se boji, kaj je tisto, kar se tako uklepa stvari. Ker v končni fazi potem res vidimo, da ni nikogar, ki bi se moral bati, da bo izginil ali pa da bo uničen. Če res globoko to razumemo, potem ves strah in vse uklepanje zaradi stvari, zaradi izkušenj izgine. In tudi to, potem vidimo lahko, da je tudi to, kar imenujemo jaz, je pravzaprav veliko različnih stvari, da so izkušnje v zavesti, da se spreminja, da se tudi naše telo spreminja ves čas. Tukaj ni česar stalnega in trdnega. Se pravi, če ni odra, na katerem bi se to dogajalo, na katerem bi sploh vzniknila napačna percepcija, na katerem bi vzniknila navezanost, sovraštvo, potem ni ničesar, okoli česar bi se morali sekirati. In tako je, tako stvari so. In zdaj, če ne razumemo tega, potem se pojavi strah, želje, oklepanje, problemi. In kadar to razumemo, potem ni nikakršnega problema. Vi pa če pravite tudi tista tretja točka, tisti tretji razlog, je pa tudi zelo pomemben, ker mogoče ne moramo toliko daleč še priti na poti, ampak tista tretja točka govori, da tudi v relativnem smislu, se pravi, to stvari izkušamo prav zdaj. Lahko vidimo, da prav vsak izmed nas ima vse ljubezen in ima željo, da bi bil ljubljen, se pravi, ima seme te razsvetljene kvalitete. In prav vsak pač ljubi ali pa ima rad tiste najbližje, ena, dva, mogoče 3 ljudi, ampak vse to ljubezen lahko razširimo. Ne samo na enega, ampak na mnogo ljudi. In pravim, da tukaj pač to jedro te modrosti, kako se lahko učimo tudi na tem relativnem nivoju, ko še ne razumemo popolnoma stvari in lahko se učimo eno drugega in lahko navdihnemo en drugega. Potem je dal primer, da recimo, tako kot ko nekdo zeha prav, pol začnejo vsi zehati.